We had some technical difficulties. We'll be just waiting for the rest of the SRB to rejoin. I think we have everybody back. Should I continue?
Sure.
Okay. So I was just talking about the multi-regional effects, and here it's important to note that the input, there are economic impacts that are retained in a region, but some of it will also flow outside of the region. And this is happening when inputs to production are imported, when wages are earned in the region by non-residents, or when there are leaks that will be also occurring when the earnings from assets necessary to production are owned by non-residents. And this is particularly important when you think about the quota ownership in the region. At the same time, there will be also inflow of benefit to the region when outputs are exported or when services are offered to non-residents. And this is particularly important in the context of charter sectors that might be offering their services to guests from other regions. When it comes to the model setup, I'll just remind you that the model is designed to calculate economic impacts for 3 Pacific halibut producing regions. These are Alaska, West Coast, and British Columbia. And there will be also 3 residual regions to account for these multi-regional or cross-regional impacts. And this is particularly important when we think about the Pacific halibut, that is a resource, that is a shared resource, and it is managed jointly by both United States and Canada. All the Pacific halibut producing regions and their sectors will be built into what is called multi-regional social accounting matrix, and this matrix will serve as a base for calculating economic impacts. There's also preliminary work done on a more spatially explicit model, and this is currently limited to Alaska, but it is also bringing a really interesting insight into the importance of thinking about the economic impacts more locally. Describing the results today, I would like to focus on Pacific halibut contribution to households, and that is the impact on earnings and income. On that, let me just make a few introductory comments. The total output will comprise of the cost of intermediate inputs, employee compensation, profit type of income, as well as business taxes. All but the first category, these will count as a value added, and this is equivalent to the sector's contribution to the gross domestic product. The first 2 components of the value added, employee compensation and profit type of income, these will be earnings that are allocated they are allocated by place of work. So here it will be where these fishing activities are occurring. These earnings can be similar to what I described earlier. They can be retained within the area where the resource was extracted, but also some of it will leak elsewhere because of all those cross-regional effects I mentioned. And why this is important, this will be very evident from the results I will be showing to you in a moment. But just before I go there, I will just mention that the economic impacts here, I will be focused on impacts in terms of earnings and income. But these can be also expressed in different metrics, which include output, but we can also talk about economic impacts in terms of contribution to GDP, impact on wages, or impact on employment. So here we have a graph of the earnings and income by region that include various components, and this is difficult, I understand, to read all of it, but I will go piece by piece to give you an exact interpretation what each of these components include. So first we have earnings by each of the sector. So you will see that the highest earnings here are actually indicated for British Columbia. And this is actually something that we found at the beginning really interesting, because obviously the harvest and output in general in Alaska is higher. But and this would be also visible here if we compare just the outputs from all the sectors. Clearly Alaska is higher. But what is really interesting is that if we look at the earnings for British Columbia, this is very much driven by the fact that the margins there must be really high, and this would be in line with the values that we observe for how much the fishermen are paying for quota in this fishery. Here we have in a plot, it's a lease price to landing price for the last years, and you can see it is going down in recent years, but it's been reaching over 80% in some of the years. I think the highest is it's going to be about 85% in 2016. And note that considerable amount of quota in British Columbia is actually leased. In 2016, it was over 60%. So no wonder that the earnings seem relative. The final results for earnings are coming out pretty high for this region. Now we'll move to how that translates into incomes. And here I would like to bring your attention to the fact that there will be a considerable outflow of earnings in going out from Alaska, particularly to other regions in the United States. And this is related to the fact there are considerable flows in the commercial sector. This will be related to flows of earnings going from where the landings are occurring and where the actual what's the location of or residency of the final owner of the permit allowing them to process the seafood. And you can see here that much of it is outflowing to the US West Coast, and some of it to the rest of the United States. The flows in red, these are highlighted outflows out of Alaska, not within Alaska, just between the different Alaskan counties. These outflows are also related to the fact that although the landings will be occurring mostly in Alaska, but a lot of it will be a lot of quota or ownership of the vessel that is landing this quota. This will be associated also with owners that are residents of other states. And you can see here, I didn't mark it, but I can use the pointer. You can see here, for example, West Coast, another one here, another one here. Here we have the rest of the United States. These are considerable shares in terms of where the landing is occurring, that is the inner circle, and where was the residency of the vessel owner and the permit owner, that is the width of the part of the ring on the outside. There are also flows outside, going from Alaska to the rest of the United States and to the West Coast. When we talk about the charter sector, these are flows in terms of permits, and you can see some of these permits, they will be owned also by non-residents of Alaska. And this will be translated into those flows that are marked with a red line on the graph. Here I also highlighted that a part that is related to the investors in British Columbia. This is actually a really interesting part here because these are earnings that will be potentially retained within the regions, within the region where the fishing is occurring, but this will be flowing from the fishing sector to the stakeholders potentially within the region, but they will be non-fishing stakeholders, which is interesting piece here, thinking about really affected by how the regulations are playing out between the different regions in Pacific Halibut context. And now what I highlighted is the part of the indirect economic impact from the commercial sector. And what's interesting here is this indirect impact, some of it will be contributing locally. This is the solid part of the bar. So this is the flow that is going directly from earnings to income within each region. But a lot of it for some region will be contributing to the economy in terms of incomes in the regions that are not where the harvest is occurring. So these are these flows going from these indirect flows that are going to regions outside of the fishing areas. And just to remind you, these are related to the imported inputs to fisheries. These are also related to hiring non-residents or having owners of factors of production who are not residents of each region. Similarly, those indirect effects can be also calculated for the recreational sector. When it comes to the charter sector, here we have this component that is contributing to the income directly, but also some of it will be contributing to the regions elsewhere. And this is, for some regions, a considerable share as well. Here we have also something that has been included. It has just over the last couple of weeks. You have not seen it before at the SRB in June. And these are contributions of the recreational sector, but not through the businesses, so not the charter sector, but contribution by anglers themselves who demand inputs related to their fishing trips, as well as contribute to the economy by spending money on durable goods necessary for their recreational activity. And here we have first the solid part of the bar is the impact locally, and then the pattern part of the bar is the contribution to those components elsewhere. So if you look at this indirect impact of the trip expenditures or durables in Alaska, much of it will be contributing to earnings there, but when we talk about the incomes, that will be moving outside. we have the table. This is a similar table you've already seen, but it's a good way also to summarize two of these sectors. And here I will be focusing on Alaska only, but this will be built for other regions as well. So here we can also compare impact on households in terms of the total economic impact for both commercial and charter sector. But we can also compare here the multipliers as well as the impact in terms of dollars per pound of removals for each of the sector. And here, not surprisingly, the economic impact on households will be higher if we talk about the output per dollar. If we're going to talk in output in dollars per dollar of output in the sector, and it's higher for the commercial sector because it's supporting not only the industries that are supplying it, but also the forward lane processing sector, so the sector that is further along the value chain. But if we talk about the output in dollars per pound of removals, this will be higher for the charter sector. And this was a similar effect were observed for other regions as well. However, I should note here that these results are sensitive to the assumption about the charter effort, about the share of the charter effort that is actually dependent on the Pacific halibut versus other species. And this is something I will be seeking refinement on from the stakeholders, because it's an important input to the analysis overall. I will also note here that this is a snapshot type of analysis, and it should not be considered an input to any discussions on the sectoral allocations, and this is because it does not incorporate the potential implications of shifting this supply balance type of dynamics. However, here we can really start to think how these kind of results, if connected with the MSC, would play out if we would consider really penalizing the big shifts in the TCUIs, and how those big shifts in the allocations or quotas, how they would impact the socioeconomic metrics, because there might be some fixed costs related to the sectors from the economics perspective, even if more strict control rules would kick in the MSC scenario, where the trajectory is on the lower level, for example. And this will be particularly important if we think about the more smaller scale or more localized economic impacts. Here we have the results for at the county level. And when we think about any shifts in changes in the regulations, it's going to be very important to think about how these play out in this more localized scale, because there might be some really more local effects that will be potentially hurting the welfare of the smaller communities or specific regions within the broader regions that we analyzed before. As noted earlier, I focused so far on economic impact on the households, but the whole analysis is complemented by the economic impact visualization tool. And using this tool, one can also assess the economic impacts in terms of output, GDP, wages, or employment. And the allocations between the regions can be also changed. And this is something that is intended to really allow this kind of interaction with the tool to assess assess various combinations of economic impacts, and this would depend on really what is the priority of the potential regulatory change. So to conclude, the economic impact assessment that I presented is intended to be this type of a comprehensive tool providing a wholesome look at the interdependencies and highlighting the fact that the resource is really contributing to numerous of industries and really different types of activities within each region. And there are a number of sectors that provide, by providing the inputs to the Pacific output producing sectors and relying on its output, all of them together contribute to the economy and add to this total economic impact. Important to note is that these cross-regional economic impacts that I described, they have a considerable impact of how these results will play out, and this is something that was very clear in these figures I was presenting earlier. The revenue generated is so the revenue generated at the harvest stage accounts only for a fraction of economic activity that would be foregone if the resource was not available. But this economic impact can be described in various metrics, and these can be really picked depending on the regulators' priority in terms of what they consider important. But it's also important to note that the economic impacts are highly heterogeneous and vary significantly by regions, and this is something that should be really kept in mind. So the results can inform on the community impacts and informing about this impact for a range of Pacific halibut is very important when we think about how we can really proactively prevent these kind of localized negative impacts of changes in the regulations. As a way forward, the Secretariat continues improving the Pacific halibut multi-regional economic impact assessment model with intention to inform stakeholders on the importance of Pacific halibut resource and fisheries to their respective communities, but also broader regions and nations, and contribute to the wholesome approach to Pacific halibut management that is optimal from both biological and socioeconomic perspective. Additional effort is planned to develop an improved strategy for primary data collection following 2021 season to improve and refine the current set of results. And the tasks enhancing the model usability to the Commission are included in the 5-year plan of integrated science and research that we'll be presenting and discussing tomorrow. So with that, I'll just note the recommendation to know the paper that provides the output, that provides the update on the model, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of our earlier discussion about the MSC, where we talked a lot about how variability in the quotas can impact the fishery. Can your model say anything about the economic impacts of varying quotas as opposed to a more constant quota?
Right, thank you for this question. At the moment, no. At the moment, this is a snapshot analysis, but the intention with the improvements that have been included in the 5-year plan, it is to make the model more dynamics and suitable for making this type of assessment. And the idea is really to incorporate the shifts or the quota varying from year to year, and potentially penalize for having these big swings, particularly penalize for having, for example, more strict harvest control rules kicking in, and how this, because these are the types of effects that are particularly concerning for the users of this stock.
Okay, great.
I have a couple of questions. First one is about the non-fishing stakeholder investor in 2B. So is that someone who does not own a fishing license but owns quota? Like, how does that work?
Thank you. Yes, so that's exactly what can happen in British Columbia. You can own a fishing quota and not be on the vessel. So you are just non-active stakeholders who can benefit from the fishery through that quota. So you just get the lease price as your compensation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So most of the impacts that you're showing are in absolute value terms, I believe. What would be interesting to add to this, because I think one of your last conclusions on your bullets was showing how important this is to the community, but it would be interesting to see like what proportion of the local total economic, kind of local GDP or whatever it is made up of the halibut contribution. Like that would be much more specific in saying how important the halibut resource is to that community. You know what I mean? Not in terms
Yes,
of total dollars,
you're
but in
right.
the
And I've been
relative.
actually thinking about it. Right, I've been thinking
Because that
about
would
actually
be,
incorporating that, and that's
yeah, that's going to be really
uh,
important when it comes to any deviations from the baseline, because obviously if it's a smaller, if it's a wealthy region, then the importance of a fluctuation in quota is much less important than a relatively non, where it's a bigger part. My final one
yes, and you're
is about,
completely right.
go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to add that you've seen a little bit about the county level results before, but I've been working now on incorporating actually also the recreational sector. So I've been just recently finalizing these results, and now I'm really thinking about how to bring these as well to those county level assessment, and that from there I think it will be really beneficial to have these comparison of the economic impact and how it compares with the the earnings overall within the county, for the impact on fisheries, to compare the impact of Pacific Halibut versus the earnings from the fisheries in general, and this kind of more comparable metrics. And I think that would be also an important component to present.
Yeah, my last one was about I think the last bullet you had in the conclusions, which was about finding biological and socioeconomically optimal policies or something. So I think in our previous meeting, we had made a request to the commission to clarify what the role of this is in the overall policy, and or it's not really our business, but anyway, it would be interesting to see if that is actually, you know, what they're aiming to do is to do socioeconomic optimization compared to what I think Dave knows what the overall mission of the commission is. I believe it was, you know, it's stated as something like optimal use of the resource. So yeah, just be curious to see if that specifically now means biological and socioeconomic. Any other?
So overall, how we see the optimum would. Sorry. Should I continue or?
Yeah.
I'm saying overall, how we interpret the optimum is this more wholesome look that would incorporate the not only biological but also socioeconomic aspects. So this is how this project came around, but the more detailed directions on the use and of this. The use of these results, that's something that will be discussed more in terms of longer term plans and through the potential changes and improvements through the components that are incorporated in the 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that when you were talking in June about the data and how data were being collected, there was concern of a general lack of response of the people who are receiving questionnaires, et cetera. And I noted in the briefing documents for this meeting, there was a statement about the need to get out and more data, and you likewise mentioned in your presentation that you were requesting more information for 2021. So is there still a concern about the conclusions to be drawn from this data because how scant the data are?
Right. So there will be two components to that. First, we are planning to conduct another round of the economic information survey around our stakeholders. This survey will be adjusted and simplified following the previous concerns of from the stakeholders that it is a significant burden and to fill the survey as it was introduced last year. Moreover, what we heard from some stakeholders, there was also a concern regarding providing information for 2020 just because some of them did not think this year would be representative and would potentially lead to unreasonable conclusions from this assessment. So I would be, regarding collecting our own primary data, I would be cautiously optimistic to collect data following the 2021 season, and that will be the plan. That said, the current version model is considerably improving on the use of the secondary data sources. There's been a lot of work on identifying any potential suitable information provided by various national and regional agencies, as well as doing further review of the relevant reports and so on. So this is getting considerably improved, even if we think about what it is and what kind of data it includes at this time.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up question. Being a resident of Alaska for a number of years, and this was quite some time ago, I remember that there were several things that came up regarding allocations that were really sort of a bone of contention. It was a very contentious issue. One of them is the allocation of the harvest to commercial versus sport harvest. And I can remember, this is a number of years ago, that the state somebody with your background to do an economic assessment of the salmon fisheries, and they demonstrated that actually there would be considerable benefit to the state economy, state of Alaska economy. These are Alaska issues, by allowing a greater allocation of the harvest to the salmon. So that was one issue, and I think that issue of stock allocation is still really there for Alaskans. And the second one is what proportion of resources are going out of state, and this is the boat operators, et cetera, the processors from the lower 48 that are a lot of dividends. And I'm wondering, whatever the objectives of the commission are for this, these 2 points, who's getting the money, where's the money going, and the allocation between a commercial and sport fisheries, maybe things that are coming out of your analysis, as important as they are, and as well as you're documenting it, that may not be as desirable to the commission as just getting information out or whatever the objectives were.
Well, my intention is to inform on the potential implications of any changes. Regarding the allocations between sectors, I would like to stress here again that this is a snapshot analysis, and it is currently not suitable for any use for the allocations between the sectors. Although I will mention here that there is interest definitely over time in this type of analysis when it comes to allocations, and particularly considering that the council will be reviewing the catch sharing plan for Alaska this year. So this might be definitely becoming a topic that is of interest. Regarding the allocations between regions, yes, this is really what I wanted to highlight is those cross-regional allocations, and this is something that should be understood when we consider particularly those localized economic impacts, because these type of regulations that might be imposed on the stock in general might have particularly strong effects on some smaller regions.
Some dynamic aspect of it, but are there any assumptions in your model about how recreational fishing effort responds to catch rates?
No, currently this is not incorporated. What you long term, if you wanted to understand better the, uh, the impact of changes in catch rate, we would probably like to do some utility analysis, how the fishermen respond to different catch rates and how their demand for the fishing trips is changing. And this is
Exactly, and that's the kind of work that I do. So I think I could potentially help on that aspect of it, which is the only piece of this that I think falls within my expertise at all. But sorry, I interrupted you. Can you explain how you can look at the effect of changing recreational allocation without making some assumptions about how recreational effort responds to availability?
So at the moment we look at how much effort, we estimate the amount of effort that is specific halibut dependent. This is based on the statistics available on the number of trips that would be specifically targeting Pacific halibut. So this is using the status quo output by the charter sector in terms of the assessed revenue by the sector and how much effort is estimated for that sector at the given time.
Oh, I see. So that's interesting because that seems to assume that all of that halibut directed effort would go away if halibut was not available. And presumably some of that effort would just switch targets, right? So some proportion of those trips would still happen. They would just happen with a different target.
Yes, so then the question is now how that would how you would see it. So at the moment, I assume that the trips that are allocated as mixed trips would continue. So even though these trips would potentially catch Pacific halibut, these would not go away. But the trips that are specifically intended to catch Pacific halibut, those would be the trips that are considered in the charter sector component of the model at this time.
That strikes me as a bit weak in both directions because some of the mixed trips would undoubtedly go away if the halibut component was gone. And some of the specifically halibut directed trips might stay and simply switch targets. And I think knowing what the proportions in each of those categories that would stay but switch targets would require probably some directed work, something like discrete choice experiments, or better yet, some work that actually looks at revealed preferences before and after different seasonal closures.
Yes, and I definitely agree that this is the still really weak part of the model that requires work. What we also tried, we also included in the survey question to the actual charter owners how they see where their business would go if Pacific halibut was not available. Just to get an idea of what they think, just to get another user group view on how they see this. But definitely the most
you've got to ask them, but the answer is completely not useful for parameterizing a model, right? I've never met a charter guide who didn't say that the sky would fall if their access to their resource was reduced. So I think that's sort of necessary, but probably not going to help in the model, as you seem to recognize.
Right, but if I just might add, but I think it's really interesting to see what's the proportion of the charter business owners who are interested in and have permits for Pacific halibut think that they would continue their business but potentially targeting different species, versus how many would say straight away that without Pacific halibut I would most likely exit the sector at all. So I think in these terms, I think this is the useful, at least to understand the potentials for complete exit from the sector.
I think it's very moderately interesting, but what would be really interesting is to do some revealed preference work where you look at the charter recreational charter effort before and after the halibut closure. Does that? Is there enough contrast there? Is there are there periods where halibut is closed but other species are open?
That's a good question. During the year, Alaska is most of the year open. It wouldn't be a. I don't think that would be very informative. Besides, it would be pretty unfavorable generally the period for going fishing in Alaska for fun in the middle of the winter, I would say. So.
Well, you'd certainly have to have some covariates yes, obviously you need some covariates to account for, seasonal effects and these other things. But if you have a day in which halibut closes and the other species stay open, that's a natural experiment for understanding the tendency for the rate at which anglers will switch species, the rate at which effort will stay up, which seems to be a pretty important parameter there. So I think there's a lot that can be done on this topic without just making assumptions that mixed trips stay and targeted trips go away. And I'm being a little bit aggressive here, and I don't mean to be critical. It's just that I think there's a real opportunity to do some more empirical work here to beef up that piece of it.
Yeah, but it's not just one species all off. There are the different species that the charter fishermen are fishing for with halibut at different times of the year. You have Chinook early on in the spring, and then a period of time where it's pretty much just halibut, and then you have coho salmon, later in the summer and early in the fall.
I totally agree, Kim. That's the point I was making. That some of the directed halibut trips will switch to other species because there are other opportunities. And when you do this kind of analysis, yes, you have to take into account the seasonal variation in what the alternatives available are. It can be pretty tricky to set up all the covariates, right? But yeah, it's complicated, but there's a lot of information there also about people's anglers' revealed preferences.
And I would add one more thing, which is that, it's the barrier to entry is not that great as far as recreational chartering. So if one guy says, yeah, I'm going to drop out, well, somebody's going to come in and take their place if there's any available fish or money to be had. Anyway, the other thing that I was wondering, because just getting back to trying to gauge the economic impact of drastic changes in TACs, what about do you know if there's like a price relationship to supply in halibut, and would this model take that into account, or just assume the price is constant?
Thank you for the question. So at this moment, the model assumes constant price, but looking at the more price dynamics and demand in those changes in price, this is a component that is considered as a potential avenue for improvement of the model that is included in the 5-year plan. So something I'm thinking about, but it's not currently a part of the model.
Speaking to someone who just had a PhD student defend his thesis with a bioeconomic chapter, so this stuff is fresh in my mind. Okay, any other comments and
If
questions?
I may,
In Canada, I don't know about it. Yeah, I guess in Alaska, but definitely in Canada.
Yeah. Is that sold at a fixed price or is it auctioned?
So this is available in both Canada and the United States. In the United States, in Alaska, you have the guided angler fishing program that allows recreational sector to buy quota from the commercial sector. These are market prices that are just guided. What is given is the ratio of how the quota is translated to the number of fish that it allows for the recreational sector. So that's something that is given, and then the price is determined by the market. This data, though, because it's private transactions, this is not something that is easily obtainable on a more to get more general statistics. You can check what is currently marketed, but not of the
Oh, but there's no records of the price for individual transactions.
not official record for that, and there can be also mixed transactions, some bartering involved there. In Canada, there's a program that as well, although it was on hold the pandemic, just because the administrative burden that it imposed, and so they decided to not go with the program in 2020. But as I understand, um, I'm not sure it was going in 2021, but I think that the plan is to reopen that opportunity in Canada as well.
Okay, but in any case, it sounds like that's not a data source that's available, because that's too bad, because that if it was, you know, some sort of a market price or an auction, that would contain a lot of information about the value of a pound of halibut to the rec sector.
Is that price any different from the commercial lease price? That's open market as well, isn't it?
But the commercial lease price, with the requirement in Alaska for the fishermen to stay on board, it's a little bit different price in Canada, where you can just lease it without being the participant in the harvesting process.
I think
So in the Mid-Atlantic region in the U.S. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I think in Canada it may be more of a bulk purchase. I don't think it's individuals trading, like individual recreation. I think it's the recreational fleet gets an allocation at a certain price from the pool.
I can provide you exact information, but there's this experimental program that allows the change in allocation. But I will, from the top of my head, I don't remember exactly the name of the program. It's something like experimental fishing. If you're interested in the details of the restrictions, it comes with it.
We're coming up on 3 p.m. We've got
Yeah, I just wanted to say one last thing here. In the Mid-Atlantic region of the U.S., there's a what's called the Research Set-Aside Program, which sets aside quota that's then auctioned to support research activities. And the research activities obviously have a value, but it's turned out that the sale prices of the quota have a lot of value as well. in this sort of economic analysis because different vessel sizes, different gear types will pay different amounts of money for quota, and it essentially reflects the quota comes with a waiver of regulations, and so it essentially reflects the perceived cost of those regulations to different sectors of the industry. So if there's a ready quota being auctioned, I think it might be worth letting the commission know that there is value in that data, and they might consider trying to have a requirement that says if you're going to auction or sell or buy this quota, the price has to be public. Personal identifying information can be removed, but the prices and some details about the type of vessel buying the quota need to be public because of the high value of that information.
Any other comments or questions before we wrap up? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Basia. Just get to the agenda here.
Thank you very much for the discussion.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So that takes us to the end of today, and the remaining time is allocated to an SRB drafting session. Olaf, I think if you have any...
I've got to drop out, Sean. Yeah, is there anybody else that can do the screen sharing then?
Possibly, or we could do an independent one. Yeah. We'll take care of it.
Okay, great. Sorry to leave you guys in the lurch there.
Oh, you have to do what you have to do.
I'll see you at 9 a.m. Pacific tomorrow.
Yes.
Great.
Thanks, Olaf.
Take care, gang.
Have a good night. Good luck teaching.